Welcome again to another Discover Trempealeau County show. We've been traveling around Trempealeau County discovering interesting people and interesting things that they do. And today we're down in the Centerville and Galesville area, and we're going to be talking to people about curling, the game of curling. It's a game that I think many of us are not very familiar with, at least I was not, and today we're going to learn about curling and some of the techniques that are used in the game and what kind of game it really is. And we have with us today, sitting around the table here, Doug Winters, I believe from Galesville, Centerville, and Leroy Hubble from Centerville, and Robin Docken,
Centerville Club.
Centerville. And it might be interesting to note behind us here a group, there's a league play going on, isn't there? Games are going on as we're talking.
Yes, from Winona League.
Let me ask you a little bit, how long have you folks been curling?
I guess since they built the club in Centerville back in probably 49, somewhere in there. And
how about you, Doug?
12 years old when I started curling. I'm 63 now.
You're an expert then.
Well, no, I just have fun.
How about you, Robin?
Well, not as long as Doug or Leroy. Probably, I'm 50 plus, close to 40 years.
Well, curling is a game that seems to, I talked to a few people before they went out curling there, it's really, people really love curling. What is it about the game that people enjoy?
well, it's very enjoyable, and almost anybody can go out there and curl and do a good job of it. It's kind of a family sport. All the members of the family can do it if they want.
Do you continually improve? You've been at it a long time, Doug. Do you get better every year or every game?
Well, sometimes, hey, it's good days and bad days. It's like anything else.
Do you always curl with the same people? Do you have a team that you stay with?
As a rule, you have a team that you play with, for a number of years if you can. Sometimes they switch teams, but most of the time you try to have a team that you can play pretty regular with.
Well, we're in Centerville, and I think there might be a few people around the county that don't know where Centerville is. So why don't you explain where we're located? How big a town is this, and where is it?
Well, you're probably better off to ask Doug because he lives almost right downtown. There's almost 50 people, I think, aren't there, Doug?
Yeah, sometimes there are 100, 200 people in town at a time.
That's when the bars are full.
That's when the bars and curling, yes. We're on, the new curling club is on 54 and 93, heading towards Galesville out of Centerville.
I think you're kind of about 5 miles from perhaps Trempealeau and about maybe 6 miles from Galesville, something like that.
5 and 5, and 12 miles out of Winona, 14 out of Arcadia.
Centerville is a town that's got its name because it was the center of the valley, the Centerville. So center of the Caledonia Prairie. And let me ask you, when did Centerville when the folks begin curling here in Centerville?
Well, they started in 49, I think, and they had been curling in Galesville, I think, before that, probably, going over there. And then they kind of split up the two clubs, or the club there, and built a club here. And I think that started curling here in about 50, maybe, when they had the first Bonspiel. 49 or 50, 49.
49 was the first Bonspiel.
What's a Bonspiel?
We have other teams coming from different clubs for a weekend to play.
This club that we have here, behind us here, that's relatively new, isn't it, Robin?
Yes. It's about, 4 years old, Doug, at the most? And it was just a whole group of individuals in the area and organizations. It was the town, the Lions Club, Marl Farms gave us the land, people that worked here, just everybody donated. It was really a group effort, and we're very lucky. As of now, anyway, if the gas bill stays down, we're out of debt.
Well, I can tell just talking to the few folks that are out curling behind us, there's a lot of enthusiasm for the game in this area, and it's kind of amazing. Why is it that curling just in Trempealeau County, the only areas that curling is popular is Centerville and Galesville. Why is that?
Oh, that's an easy one. I think that was mostly the Scottish, and it was a Scottish game, and because of the whole Scottish settling down in this area between Decorah Prairie, McGilvery Bottoms, even Pickwick, Minnesota, across that way up to North Bend, so you had curling starting here before the Civil War, even though it wasn't in buildings, it was on the ice.
So like you're talking about maybe Lake Marinuka or maybe on the Mississippi River they were curling?
They were curling on Lake Marinuka. They were curling on Beaver Creek. They were curling on Black River. They were curling down in McGilvery Bottoms. They were curling on the Mississippi out of Pickwick and Winona, for sure. Mm-hmm.
You know, I checked. I got a dictionary. Well, not a dictionary, encyclopedia back home on the computer, and I just checked a little bit on curling, and it's surprising. It said that it was developed or found or discovered or created or whatever you want to call it back in between 1530 and 1550. So it's been around a long time, hasn't it?
Oh, it certainly has. You even read about it in some of Bobby Burns' old poems like Tam O'Shanter and this kind of thing when they talk about the curling. Yeah.
And this, I think, as far as Trempealeau County is concerned, and that's where this show is going, I believe that the Scottish people settled in the Galesville, this area, and that was the only area, I think, in Trempealeau County, I believe, where there was
Ettrick was Scottish. Ettrick was Scottish. Glasgow, Hardy's Creek, that whole area, Centerville, Scotia area in Caledonia, that was certainly Scottish. But yeah, southern Trempealeau County, I would guess.
Do you think your, like say your fathers and mothers, that they curl, even though there maybe wasn't a rink back?
Not my parents. My parents, they were kind of gone away from here. My dad died pretty young, so we didn't get a chance to that. My mother never did, so.
How about yours?
Yeah, my dad curled.
Where did he curl?
Centerville Curling Club, and our original one, our old one.
I know they always talk about our young kids that have been extremely competitive. We've had several, we've had an Olympian, we've had some national champions, we've had some world-placed curlers, and they always think that's fairly recent, but it isn't. We've had competitive curlers out of this area for a number of years that have done well at state competitions and that kind of thing. It's nothing new, very competitive, and I think it's the camaraderie in the small town atmosphere that kind of keeps it going.
Well, we're in front of the curling rinks here, and I'm going to introduce you to four gentlemen, young fellows, who are going to kind of introduce us to the game of curling. And I have Zach Hilton to the right of me. Maybe, Zach, you can introduce your friends.
Over here we have Cam Delaney. He's the skip of our team.
He's the what of your team?
Skip.
What does that mean?
He shoots the last rocks.
Okay, we're going to look. You have to realize Wade and I know nothing about this game, so we're going to be asking you some pretty dumb questions. But we think there's a lot of people that don't understand the game, so you guys are going to tell us all about it. And who are the other two on my left?
On the far left is Chris Kramer, and then he shoots second rocks. And then Kurt is our lead.
Now you guys are going to do some demonstrating for us and how this game is played and how it's scored. I guess I'd ask you, how many people are on a team?
Four on each team.
Are they on the same team, or that means 4 plays against 4? Is that the way it's set up?
Yeah, it's 4 against 4.
How long? What do you call what's behind us here? Are these? What's the name of that? Is it a court or?
It's a sheet.
Did you say sheet? Sheet of ice.
Yep.
Okay, and that's what you play on. And so when you line up out there, what is there? 4 people in on each end of this of the sheet?
No, there's the skip down on one end. There's 2 skips.
Hold her down. You're talking about skips. I don't know what that means.
The skips call the shots, and there's 1 on each team, and they both stand down on the other end. And then you have 1 shooter and 2 sweepers, and then once the first rock's done shooting his 2 rocks, the teams alternate. The first rock will shoot 1 rock, then their team will shoot 1 rock, and it alternates back and forth like that. And each person gets 2 rocks.
So what's the objective of the game? Is there a scoring system? I notice there's kind of a red, white, and blue area, round circular areas out there. Uh, what does that represent?
Well, the team with the most rocks closest to the center, that's how many points they get. So like if you have one rock just touching the dead center, and then the rest of the rocks are the other team, you only get 1 point. But however many rocks you have closest to the center is how many you get.
So how many scores are there in a game? I mean, what's the max when you reach a certain number of scores, then you're the winner, or how does that work out?
Well, you play 8 ends, and an end is you go down, you shoot all the rocks down to the other end, and that's an end. And usually you get 1 to 3 points an end most of the time.
Well, Zach, we're out on the sheet. I want to call it rink, but it's sheet, and we're looking at what do you call these objects?
Just the stones or rocks.
And that's what people throw on the ice. Is that right? Well, would you mind lifting one up, and we'll kind of take a look at the rock and get a little closer look. It looks like it's some kind of granite material.
They're 42-pound granite rocks, and you can see that they have a running surface on them. Cut into them. You want to feel that?
Oh yeah.
So it'll run down the ice nice, because if it was flat, it wouldn't do that. But
And, let's take a look at the handle then. The handle is just appears to be a plastic handle that's hooked onto the rock some way, welded onto the rock some way.
yeah, and that's to well, when you're sliding out, to hold on to. And then you have rotations, so you turn the rock either way, depending on what rotation your skip wants.
Well, let me grab a hold of that and see how it feels. Holy moly! You got to be strong to play this game.
Yeah.
That's are there lighter ones for young kids and women?
Yeah, little kids have, when they're just starting out, they have.
Oh, you mind holding that? That's pretty heavy.
Yeah. Little kids start out sometimes with like 20-pound rocks, but those are only, some clubs have them. We don't.
They don't have kind of a lighter one for old people like me, huh?
No, it really doesn't take much to throw a rock.
Well, Zach, you mentioned that they have special shoes for curling. Maybe one of your friends here, Kurt, would demonstrate his shoes, and maybe you could explain it to them, and maybe there's different kinds of shoes.
Well, there is a few different kinds of shoes. These, we all have built-in sliders. They're made out of Teflon, so you can slide down the ice. There is stainless steel, which for shoes would be about $250 for just the shoes. But you can get sliders that you can just put on your feet instead of built in like this. But
Your other friend here, who is
Chris,
he's got a different kind of shoe.
yeah, it ranges. That's faster than these.
Okay, now you've got a bunch of what do you call them? Brooms? They look like brooms.
Yep.
Now, is that part of the things that you use in curling? Brooms?
Yeah, when the sweepers go down to sweep a rock, either to keep it straight or to make it go further. And on the far end there, that's a corn broom. That's what they started out with. That's what the old guys still use, but that's what they started out with. And then they went to this bristle broom, and now we have synthetics to get more friction, to keep it straighter and go faster.
Now, explain again. Can they use any one of those three types of brooms, or do they use one today?
No, they can use whatever they want.
Which one is the best?
I'd go with the synthetic one.
What does that do that's better than the other one?
It just gives it more friction. Like when it goes along the ice, it creates a little bit more heat, which makes the rock go further.
Is that one of your teammates then that's doing the sweeping? One of your teammates that's helping you get the rock to where you want it to go?
Yeah, we all rotate. There's 2 sweepers, and then rotate. Cam on the far left with the corn broom, that really takes some technique. See, that's not very much fun.
That's a lot of work, I think.
That's a lot of work. It takes a lot of technique, so.
Well, why don't we get the other broom, the other evolution? That was the next evolution, apparently, is in the development of the broom.
That's just a back and forth motion in front of the rock. The rock would be going and he'd sweep in front of it.
And then how about the other demonstration?
That's the same way as this one. That just creates more friction since it's the synthetic rubbing on the ice.
What if you only got one rock in this whole circle and it happens to fall in red?
It just means you got 1 point.
How about if it falls on white?
1 point.
How about blue?
1 point.
How about if he hits a bullseye?
1 point.
So explain a little bit more about what's happened with this particular layout, if this is a real layout.
Well, it doesn't matter how many rocks are in the house because only one team can score. And
Repeat that. You mean there's only one team can score after everybody throws?
Yeah.
And there's how many people that are throwing?
total, there's 8 people that throw.
8 people that throw to one, from one end to the other, but only one team can score.
Right.
And how do they determine that one team who gets the score? I mean, how do you know who's like in this particular situation here? I guess the yellow would be one team and the red would be the other team.
Yeah. Well, here yellow would only get 1 point because it has one rock closest to the center, and then the second closest rock is the red.
Zach, we have another kind of layout here. What score would this particular team in yellow get with this particular layout here?
Right now, yellow looks like it has 3 because, well, first of all, that one closest to the center is the one that would count right away. And then you have 2 other ones that are closer than any red one. So now you'd have 3 for yellow.
Okay, why don't one of your friends move the red rock in a little bit? Okay, now we've changed one rock here. Now explain the scoring with this setup.
Now yellow would just have 1 because they're closest to the center. And now none of the other rocks count because there's one yellow closest to the center, and then the next closest rock is red. So red doesn't get anything, but yellow gets 1.
All right, Zach will be demonstrating the flat foot delivery. It's when your slider foot is flat the whole time. It's basically, with a flat foot delivery, you basically get better line, like you hit the broom better, and you're more consistent, and it's easier on your knees, and it's basically what everybody's doing now. It's the new fashion of it.
I noticed as they delivered here, there's the line up here. Is that line of some significance?
That's the hog line. They have to release the rock by the hog line, otherwise the rock is burned or taken out of play.
How many deliveries are there?
There's basically 3 deliveries, but there's variations of those 3.
Is Zach going to give us another demonstration here?
Yeah, Zach can show the tuck delivery. It's a little bit harder on your knees, but it is for generating more weight for upweight shots. It is a little bit harder on your knees later on, but you can be really, like, hit the broom better and on the line better.
Let's see, we have Robin Docken that's going to be demonstrating, I think, the next delivery. Do you know what she's going to be doing?
Yeah, this is the backswing delivery. It's when she'll actually pick the rock up off the ice to deliver it, to generate momentum. And so she's kind of the expert of this. It's one of the older deliveries. You don't see this very much anymore. It generates a lot of power behind it.
So the difference there was she lifted it up momentarily before she threw it on the ice.
Yes. Yeah.
Is curling a spectator sport? In other words, are there spectators here that are watching your teams? Are they, most games, there's like football and basketball, spectators are yelling and hollering. I noticed here you got a big glass, that maybe insulated glass to keep it cool out on the ice, but are there spectators present at your games? Doug?
Oh, yes, and when we have bonspiels, there's spectators that come, watch their family curl or their, friends.
Do they get involved, kind of wild emotion like they do in some of the other sports?
Well, sometimes, but you maybe can see them. through the glass, but you can't hear them all the time, like, you know, in the other sports.
What's the temperature out there?
I think our temperature out there is above freezing. I don't know. Yeah, I mean, because we have a machine that keeps the thing cold on the bottom there, so they keep it. It's really, really comfortable out there when you're curling. In fact, you can work up a pretty good sweat if you get working out there.
How many nights per week do they curl here at the curling club here in Centerville?
Well, they have a league or something going on Sunday through Thursday. And then during the main January, February area, they've also got bonspiels going on the weekend. And we've got kids curling after school, everything from 4th grade on up, and some of them are a lot younger when their parents come with them. We have a almost senior men's league that curls out of Winona on Wednesday afternoons. Really active organization, active leagues, and I think what people miss about, when they talk about curling, I think one thing we forget to talk about, and Leroy hit on a little bit, was the family. And even when Doug said, oh yeah, I was curling when I was 11 or 12 and my dad curled, I remember reading an article when Doug first curled in his first Bobby Burns spiel in Gelsville. And I won't go into which year that was, Doug, but I believe you were curling with your dad. Yeah, and you see a lot of that intergenerational changing. I see a lot of trophies around here where Leroy's name is on there as Skip, but also with him is his wife Ramona and maybe his daughter Betty, or maybe it was Kathy, or maybe it was the grandchildren with Billy, or one of those. And it's such a family intergenerational thing that you don't see, and you can still be competitive. You can be 50 and compete against the kids that are 14. And surprise them dearly sometimes when you beat them, and vice versa, I guess. And it's just really nice. I like that.
Do they have a women's league, or are the men and women? Are they on the same teams, or?
It's funny, and I could almost see a smile out of Doug. Yes, we have a women's league, and I was just thinking back to when women first started curling. What an uproar it was! How about it? These guys will probably remember that even better than I do.
How long ago was that?
Oh my goodness sakes, I suppose in the 50s it started women's curling. And
it was only men up to that point.
And yeah, and I'm sure glad they got the women involved, because some of those women got to be pretty good.
Kind of hurt to get beat by a woman, huh?
It did, yeah. Yes, it was. It was a lot of fun though, when you could curl out with your wife and like that.
A lot of people quit when that happened. There were some that just kind of bowed out and didn't come back till later.
Now you've got a lady Olympian, haven't you, here out of this club?
Well, no, she's a junior national champion. She curled at the World Junior Championships in Geising, representing our club. And very lucky, she came home with a bronze. Did well, showed the good old Centerville sportsmanship.
What's her name? What is her name?
Laura Delaney. And I sound a little prejudiced because she's my niece.
Well, you got to be proud. Everybody's proud of her. That's quite an accomplishment. Are there any other individuals that you might want to mention here that from this club that have done real well on either a national or international curling events?
We've had some kids do extremely well out of here at international and national events. Be they Mike Poplinski, Ryan Brott, Corey Ward, Ryan Quinn, Carrie Ward, Laura Delaney. It's finally an Olympic sport, and we'll see what happens with that. But that's just now officially a winter sport. So it's hard to compare, is that something new? This area was always known for extremely competitive curlers. You just hated to go out on the ice and have to curl against Doug or Leroy. You knew you were going to get beat.
So, how old do people curl? What's the oldest curler that you have in your clubs?
I think I'm sitting beside him.
Well, there's some older than me. I think 74 I am. And I've curled almost every year since I started, I guess. So.
Well,
Yeah, he's curling league.
I'm curling league once a week, yeah.
Like our senior men's, they might be a little older, some of them, but Leroy's curling, every week.
I tell you, I'm no spring chicken, but I lifted one of those, what do you call them, rocks?
Yeah.
And I couldn't hardly lift it. I think they weigh something over 40 pounds. And
They They weigh about 42 pounds, and it really doesn't take very much to get them down to the other end. Once you get, the type of delivery that you can handle, why it really goes pretty easy.
And the women use a 42-pound rock as well.
Yes, they do, yeah.
We're giving no advantage to them. I got to come back with another thing. You see your younger people, when they deliver, they won't lift the rock. You notice that? They just bring it back and push.
Push them right out from the
The
head.
old school, with natural ice, we had to bring them back to get them down because we didn't have this nice ice we have today.
When is it eligible to start sweeping? Is there any position in the rink here or the sheet where they can start or where they can't start before a certain point?
They can start sweeping the minute the man lets go of the rock, or the person delivering the rock, as far as that goes. But usually, unless they have an idea of what the weight is, and you can sweep for weight or line, you'll hear the skip holler, "Sweep." You heard him yell, "Yeah," right now, and they immediately start to sweep, which will make this rock go further because it's light.
What happens if they hit the rock, with the broom?
The rock is disqualified. You have to take it off immediately. The skip right now is holding the broom, and the gentleman shooting will be aiming at that broom. He's already told them what he wants to do. The minute this gentleman comes out of the hack that's delivering, the skip will be watching for angle, and he'll be watching for weight, and he'll call sweeping or not to see if they're wide, narrow, heavy, light, if the ice is red right, and usually it is, and they'll sweep hard to make the shot. And you heard him saying, "Sweep hard, sweep hard." There are red colors, if you notice, red rocks, and yellow handled rocks. So the red score is put above, the yellow score is put below. In the middle is just the numbers available to score with. If you notice right now, the score is red has 2 and yellow has 1, if you look at that. And the numbers like the 3 and the 2 that you see in the colors themselves tell which end or inning those were made in. So you know where they're at and what inning they're in or what end they're in.
There's a certain amount of turning, I noticed. The rock turns a little bit as it goes down the ice.
Right, and when it turns, usually they call it an in-turn or an out-turn, being clockwise or counterclockwise. That surface that you had seen earlier under the rock is what's working against that pebble on the ice that turns, and the turn helps it go where it wants to go.
It's a gentleman's game. When you walk out on the ice, you introduce yourself, you shake hands, you curl. If your opponent makes a nice shot, you compliment on it. When you get done, win or lose, you shake hands and come off the ice.
Well, and I observed that before this Winona group that's curling behind us. They were all shaking hands. I observed that. Yeah. Well, that's kind of quite a nice job. Has that been a part of the game ever since you remember?
Yeah. As long as I can remember, we did that. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, it's quite a game.
The other thing you should notice too when you look out here, and I might have mentioned this even before, like if you're at a basketball game or a football game, you hear a bunch of whistles blowing, or you see a lot of refs hollering or giving signals on a foul. If you notice, there are no referees, there are no umpires. Everything's good sportsmanship around here. If you're the one that fouls a rock, you're the first one to say, "Geez, I touched that rock," and then what the other skip does is fine. That's his call.
Are you sure Doug don't kind of nudge it toward the center of the...
Okay. It has its stories, but there's something about a curler. I don't care what the weather is. You might miss work. The roads might be too bad to go someplace else, but they're never too bad to go curling. I think most of us have gone through blizzards and ice and sleet and drifts that you almost have to walk through just to get to a curling game. And it doesn't change even when you get older. Not that you're old, Leroy, but I think...
Something happened with Leroy?
Well, we almost lost him in a snowstorm. It was pretty darn close, and it was Doug's fault. Doug, you tell him.
Well, what happened?
What happened? Oh, he picked me up about 4:30 that afternoon to go to Gills, and it was getting bad. And we played our game. And we took off right away after, and I had to look out. I was on the rider's side, in the front seat. I looked out the window and helped him drive to Centerville. I said, well, why don't you stay at my place, or Tony Raymond over here owns the corner. He says, you can stay at, my place. Oh, Leroy says, I'll be able to get home. I said, well, take my truck, four-wheel. No, he said, I'll get home. So I called his wife, and she said, let's give him an hour. Well, she called back, and no Leroy home yet. So I started out. I got up the road a little ways, and it was whiteouts. So I stopped up to one of his friends, got him out of bed. But then we called up there, and Leroy, he got home, but he had to walk a little ways before he put her in the snowbank.
Almost a mile.
Yeah, it was.
Was it really worth it?
Well, yes, it was not the stumbling through the snow, but the game was.
Excellent. Thanks a lot. Well, this has been a real pleasure talking to you fellows and ladies, and we appreciate all of you. Doug Winters, is that correct? Winters, Leroy Hovell, and Robin Docken.
Before we kind of sign off, can I invite people to come down? Sometimes when they see the Bonspiel advertised in the paper, come on out, watch it. We'd love to have them. Or we do have a website under the Centerville Curling Club that they could certainly find, I'm sure. And
do you know the letters or whatever for the?
Oh, I certainly do. If you go to the www.centerville, CNTRVLNEWS.com, you can go right on there, and you can go right to the early edition, and you'll get all the information on curling in this club.
Well, we've been over to the Centerville Curling Club, visiting with the folks over at Centerville, and now we're in Galesville, only 5 miles away, and they have another curling club here in Galesville. It's a very old club. They've been curling here for many, many years, and we're going to talk to the folks here who are waiting on the inside to speak with us, and we're going to talk to them about the history and a little bit of information about the curling club here in Galesville in southern Trempealeau County. And we're going to be talking with a few current or past officials here at the club, and I think rather than try and introduce them, I'll just pass the mic around and they can introduce themselves and kind of tell us a little bit about your involvement, either currently or in the past, of the Galesville Curling Club.
Yes, I'm Carol Sasha. I belonged to the club for over 50 years. I guess I can say some things later on what really went on here, but I was president back in 1961 when we put in the artificial ice here, and we've had lots of curling go on here since.
Gary?
Yeah, my name's Gary Redstein. Carol said he's been here 50 years. I've been here a little less, over 40 though, between 40, 45. And like Carol said, we've all been past directors or president of the club at many, many different times.
This is Carol's son. Introduce yourself.
Yes, I'm Dick Sasha, nickname of Doc. Been active here for 40 years. Dad had me down here when I was a youngster, being involved with whatever, remodeling or whatever we had going on here. And I'm still an active curler and active board member at this time.
Hi, I'm Don Doring. I knew nothing about curling until I moved to town here in '78, and I was introduced to curling and loved it ever since. We're still doing some curling, and it's a great exercise for everyone, especially when you get a man my age.
Well, you brought up an interesting point there. I haven't seen much curling, but we're over to the Centerville Club, and it kind of dawned on me that curling is kind of it's a lot of exercise. Those stones are what, around 42 pounds. You're lifting those heavy stones. They aren't made lighter for women or men. Then you got to run on the ice and you got to throw them. And it's I don't know how long the rink is. They told me, but over 100 feet long. and then there's people brushing with the with the brooms. So it seemed like a lot of work, rather than just relaxing. So what is it about the game that you really do enjoy?
Well, it's the camaraderie with the people on the ice and afterwards. Like I said, I've curled for over 40 years, 45 years, and I have yet to see anybody have an angry word where they really got down to blows like you do on other games. This is, it's just a real camaraderie and a real fun sport.
I think there's a certain amount of honesty with the game because you don't have referees or anything like that, do you, Doc?
Oh, that's right. As you go out onto the ice, everyone from both teams shakes hands and says, good curling. As the game goes on, if a good shot is made by the opposing team, the other team will acknowledge that. And then as the game ends, everybody shakes hands again and says, great game, and then goes back to the relaxing area and has a Coke or whatever it may be and just discusses the game and life in general, I guess.
No beer before the game, right?
We try to hold off until after, but sometimes if it's been a tournament, a bonspiel we call it, but that's a tournament, some of them might have maybe an extra beer before they get out there, but we try to watch that.
Well, we're going to talk a little about the history of the curling club here at Galesville. Before we do that, I'd like to ask a question. Is curling a game that can be played at any age? What is the oldest member in your club? Is there any? Do you reach a certain point where you can't curl?
We had a member in our last bonspiel, which ended last weekend. I think he was 82 years old. Am I right?
I believe that's probably about right.
82 years old.
It's a game. Don't they have the, what do you call the stones? Aren't they a little lighter for somebody that age?
No, they're 42 pounds right down the line. They do have lighter stones in some clubs for the juniors, but as of yet, we don't have those clubs, or those stones, I should say.
Well, as Wade and I drove in today, we noticed the sign. It says Galesville Curling and Burns Club. That kind of threw us. Burns Club. Curling, we finally kind of understand a little bit about, but who wants to answer where that Burns name comes from? Carol?
Yes, Bobby Burns really wasn't a curler. The way I understand, he was a poet, and he was from Scotland. And of course, the rocks that we use are quarried from the shores of Scotland. That's where the stones come from. And Bobby Burns wrote these poems about curling, and that's how it really all got started. Many clubs use his name as basic because of that fact. Our club has been going since, I just see the picture here, 1882, when they curled on the slough out of town here, and also we have a picture here where they curled on the Lake Marinuka, and it shows a picture of the Galesville Concert Band at that time and the curlers out there. That was early 1900s by the time they got there. But this is back in 1882. As long as I'm talking, I might as well tell about the old rink that was here. That was, I know, early 1900s or late 1800s. There's a few people. There's one person I know was Theodore Scarslett that curled with, and that is natural ice, way before they had artificial ice like we use now. And this is a picture here of the front of the building. 2 or 3 of those people I also knew in the same picture up here.
So this curling has really started a long ways back, didn't it? And probably, was it brought, would you say it's safe to say it was brought in by the Scottish immigrants when they came?
Yes, definitely. I forgot to mention that there was Oliver's, and I can't think of some of the names. There's McKees, there's Dick, Lester Dick there, and many of those were full-blood Scotch. And my grandpa was a full-blood Scotch.
I want to mention that one picture there where they're curling between the railroad tracks. They flooded between the rails.
Have any of you ever curled on natural ice? Tell me a little about the difference between curling on natural ice and what you're using today, artificial ice.
I guess the biggest difference would be power. In natural ice, you could go out here and your ice would be perfect. The sun comes up and heats up your building, and of course then it would get heavier because you would have a little bit of water on the top. I can recall one time I was curling and supposed to go on the ice at 4 o'clock in the afternoon and never got on the ice until 12 o'clock that night because of the fact we had to wait till the sun went down and it cooled enough to firm that ice back up. But it was a lot heavier. The difference between now and then, with the natural ice and the pebbling and stuff they're doing, they've came a long way with this curling. The rocks are thrown by our youngsters, like we say, and they're 42 pounds, and they can get them down there just as easy as Doc can over there in his youthful age. In the latter years now, we have bought a machine, they call it a shaver. As your ice gets a little bit uneven or gets a crack in it, which will happen once in a while, they can go up and down the ice with that shaver and shave it down and then put the pebble back on it. And the pebble is actually what keeps your ice level.
How many members or how many people curl here in Galesville? You happen to know that?
Yeah, we have presently somewhere between 125 to 150 curlers. I know we talked earlier about the age of curlers, and I think the high end was mentioned at 82 years old. We had a Bonspiel or tournament here last weekend, and after the Bonspiel, my granddaughter was out at 5 years old and pushing rocks from one end to the other and was able to get it there. So they can start curling by, I guess 10 is probably more realistic, but about any age and continue until they can't do it anymore, I guess. So.
What age do you really kind of reach your peak? Is there a certain, like basketball, you might maybe 35 or something like that?
Well, yeah, I guess I hear Gary say in the background here that 20-year-olds, and I guess the younger ones, when they're in that peak of their athletic ability, it makes a difference because they can sweep harder and the eye-hand coordination's a little better. That group is usually the ones that are toughest to beat, I think.
Do you have any young people that from this club that went on to great successes? Like I guess in 1998, the Olympics, the first time curling was in the Olympics in Japan. Is there some?
Yeah, we've this club is, I think, known throughout the world, even in curling, from members here. Probably the one that's been into the championship curling from this club was Steve Brown, and he's now in the Madison area. Has had a lot of success as a state champion and a national champion and done real well in the world. And now just recently we've had a lot of other young kids, but Ryan Quinn, which is from the area, last year was state champion, national champion, and went on to the world and had some success there. He curled with Steve Brown's son, Craig. Craig was born and raised in the Madison area, but still his grandparents are in our area.
Do you have, or maybe you do have, some kind of a honor roll of somewhere in your club here of these people that have succeeded in a great way, either statewide or nationally?
We collect pictures of several of the people that have had some success, and then we also have what we call a wall of fame here that just people that have been successful curlers or been successful in helping us keep this club a successful club. And we honor those people with a little plaque that we put on the wall in the club.
I think that's real good to give people recognition because outsiders enjoy that when they come in somewhere and see people that have, great accomplishment. Let me ask you, your club here is, I think, a little older than Centerville's. Anybody want to respond to that?
Yeah, they're more than twice as old, I guess. Centerville, I believe, started in 49 or 50. That first club was built. This one, of course, has been going since the late 1800s. So, but Centerville's did a great job, and they've got a lot of new curlers there too, which keeps the thing going.
Is it a little unusual for a county to have two clubs? You know, I don't know anything about curling, but it seems rather unusual. This is kind of an unusual game. I mean, most of the people, I'd say 95% of the people in the county have never seen curling, and we got two clubs. Are there other counties that have two clubs, or is this?
Well, that's a good question. I think you'll find throughout the state, and I might be wrong, but I believe Trempealeau County obviously has two. In Columbia County, that's called the Curling County of Wisconsin, and that's in the Madison area. And I'm not going to be able to tell you exactly, but I believe there's 5 clubs in Columbia County, which is very unusual, but obviously a bigger county population-wise. So for Trempealeau County to have 2 would be very unusual for the numbers.
I think you mentioned a little earlier, somebody used the word, was it Bonspiel? Is that when you play other clubs? And tell us about that. Or do you belong to a league, or do you just go out and make arrangements with another club to have a meet with them, or do you go to Columbia County to play in those 5 rinks down there? Tell us a little about that.
Owen, that's right. The Bonspiel is when you go to other clubs or they come to your club. You would have curling competitive curling that isn't called a Bonspiel, but when it comes, the Bonspiel is when people go to your club or you go to their club, and then you have it's actually a single elimination, although they'll have more than one event. And what happens, you just play until you lose, and then if you lose, you would go to what we call a second or third event. It's just more of a consolation, but a normal tournament will have 16 to 48 teams, and it'll just play down until there's one survivor that hasn't lost, and they go away the champion.
Is that how they compete, or do they belong to is there a league? Do you have a league? Do you have a league here in Galesville, or a league with other clubs or something, or how does that work? Gary?
Yeah, we've got a league here. The men curl twice a week in the evenings, and then they also have a mixed league. And the mixed is the husband and wife or husband and girlfriend, and they have a league where they curl also.
Yeah, we just like to mention our juniors. That's what's going to keep us going here, and for years it's been that way. My high school principal, Norm Valiska, kept a junior program going. That would have been in the late 60s. We had Bonspiels with 60-some teams of kids and adults. And now this weekend we'll have a Bonspiel down here with at least 20 teams of youngsters, I would say 4th to 8th graders. So we don't want to forget them. They're probably our most important part of our club.
Well, now, like in basketball, they have like a no-hitter or something like that. You know, I don't know if they have such a deal in curling or not, where you have a perfect game. Have you ever had a perfect game, or is there such a thing as a perfect game?
I've never had a perfect game. Perfect game, or it isn't a game, a perfect end, is 8 stones inside of a circle here, closer than any of your opponent's stones. The closer you are to the center, that's the rocks that count without an opponent's stone in between any of the rest of them. And I've seen a couple of 8-ins laid here in our club. I personally, 7 is the most that I've ever been involved with. I think it was Richard McKeith, laid an 8-in here in Gilsville, and that's the last one I've seen for many years.
It's like bowling. You get 'em all strikes.
Right.
Yeah. And so you're the new curler on the block, Don. Tell us about what you like about the game.
I love the game. It's a lot of exercise, a lot of companionship, and I think it's one of the only sports games around that if you start young in high school or any age like that, you can curl no matter how old you get. And it's a wonderful game. And one thing about curling where most sports don't have is you do something after a game, like having a banquet and a few drinks. The winner is the one who has to furnish the drinks and snacks and so forth. So it's a great game and great exercise. And one thing about it, you're always doing something. You're not out there watching only when the other team is curling, but it's one man and then another man from the other team. And so you're always active on it. You're not like some sports where if you're not hitting the ball or throwing the ball, you're set it down. Here, you're always doing something, and it's great to do that. And really good companionship. You meet a lot of great people. We had one team here, they haven't curled here for, 4 or 5 years, I think, Gary. It's that team that we have a senior spiel, which is you have to be 50 or over to curl in it. A total of 200 years. And this team came down and curled with us. They were over 300.
Well, if the winners have to buy the beer, it must be kind of an incentive not to win, isn't there? You know, what's the season for curling? I mean, obviously when the weather gets warm, it reaches a point maybe where you can't afford to make the ice or something like that, or don't stay. What's the normal season, or is that flexible based on the weather?
It is somewhat flexible, but our season here, because of the capacity of our machine to take care of 3 sheets of ice, we like to have our ice around the end of November, excuse me, and then run until March or a little bit later. Some clubs have bigger machines and they can handle their stuff, and they'll run from September right on through to April.
Well, we have a series of pictures that we'd like to show, and Gary, I guess we'll start with you.
Okay, thank you. This is a shot of unloading the machine, and this all happened back in 1961, as Carol explained to you. He was president of the club at that time. This shows unloading the machine. This picture down here shows the amount of volunteer help that we had, which was tremendous. A picture here of our new kitchen area back in '61, and a picture here of showing our rink away from it is right now, the way it is. Our rink used to be, our viewing room used to be on that end, now it's on this side.
Let me interrupt you right there. You said that you've kind of reversed, but when we came in, we noticed that fireplace. On the other side, inside, it's the only one in the world, I think one of you guys told me, that has a rink with a fireplace inside the rink. The only curling club, so you kind of stand alone with that. So explain that to us.
As I was saying, as we were looking at this picture in '61, we used to have the viewing room on the other side. The viewing room is where the people stay, where it's warm, and watch the curlers as they're out on the ice. And the way that we heated that viewing room was with a fireplace. Now, after we changed this whole system around and brought our viewing room to the other end of our rink, we left the fireplace right in the center sheet of our 3 sheets of ice. And it's the only club that I know of that has a fireplace on their ice.
When was the last time you've had it fired up?
Well, that's a good thing you brought that up. We fired it up the night that we were going to have our grand opening and show our new club. The gentleman that I took over making the ice from, George Oliver, decided we needed a little heat. He fired up the fireplace, and the siren took off, and Carol and I and everybody else come down here, and we could just about 3 feet from the bottom of the floor to the roof was solid smoke.
Well, Carol, I think you're the next one to maybe explain the picture you have over here.
This is our machine here that we put in 1961 when we put in our artificial ice. As the boy said, we had natural ice before that, and this was a great improvement. And it's still running today. You might be able to hear it in the background. Picture here is Donald Johnson and myself looking over the machine.
Doc, Seisha, you have a picture of the Seisha boys, I think.
Yeah, it's got to promote the family here a little bit. My grandfather in the middle, and Dad on one side, and his brother, and then 3 cousins. It's the curling Seishas. That picture's from sometime in the 50s.
And Don, what do you have?
I have a little brochure from curling Bonspiel. Now that was done in 1887, and the prices have changed a little bit, because the prices here, you could dance for 50 cents, tickets for the festival were 25 cents, and supper was 25 cents. And I don't think nowadays you're going to be able to get anything for Bonspiel or any place for that much money. So they had a good time, even though they did have good Bonspiels, and they really enjoyed it.
Well, you guys have done a tremendous job here in Galesville with your curling club, and I want to thank Carol Seisha, Gary Redston, Doc Seisha, and Don Doring. We want to thank you guys this afternoon for chatting with us. Appreciate it very much.